sixth grade. We're going to finish up chapter 19 today. We ended yesterday talking about the Peace of Westphalia. Remember, Thursday is going to be your Zoom review. 1 o'clock. Friday will be 8 tests. All right. We did end up with the Peace of Westphalia. It ended the 30 Years' War, recognizing Calvinism among the other official languages, and also divided the Holy Roman Empire into more than 300 states. That's right there in your notes. Frederick William I. He ruled Prussia from 1730 to 1740. He was a powerful leader, very devoted to the Prussian army. He wound up efficient fighting forces in Europe. This helped Frederick earn the nickname the Royal Drill Sergeant. He was very much in the military. Prussia became known for its militarism and its military capability. Frederick I really enjoyed actually recruiting soldiers, especially tall soldiers, which is a little bit kind of weird. Although he was tall himself, he even formed a regiment of giants, is what they called it. I got it in quotation in your notes, that he trained himself. So, once again, as many times we've talked about it, if you wanted to be a power in the world, way back when, and really even today, you better be a military power. But either way, he was considered one of the more powerful leaders of Prussia during his time. Frederick II became king of Prussia in 1740 and adopted his father's military ways while expanding Prussian territory. Typically, people weren't building their military, throughout history when they're strengthening and getting it better. Most of the time, it's not simply to have a good defense in case they're invaded and to protect themselves. It was to go out and conquer territory. And Frederick II, he did expand the Prussian territory. He would go on to be known as Frederick the Great. And during his time, the 7 Years' War occurred from 1756 to 63. This was a worldwide conflict. Prussia still wound up in it in 1756. And after several victories over Austria, your note's wrong, it says the Austria, it should just be over Austria, Frederick signed a peace with them. And that was mainly who Prussia was fighting within this, although there was other countries involved, in particular France and Great Britain. During the 7 Years' War, they fought each other. During that time frame, they fought each other actually in America, in what was known as the French and Indian War. This one, America was still, the colonies were still in play and all that. This was pre-American Revolution. But they fought during this period in time. And the Treaty of Paris ended the 7 Years' War. That's right there in your notes. As a result, France had to give up most of French Canada and its lands east of the Mississippi to Great Britain. All right, and as a result of the 7 Years' War, Great Britain became the strongest colonial empire. They became the strongest one. Ultimately, there was a saying about their empire as it grew throughout the 1700s and the 19th century as well, that the sun never set on the British Empire because they had colonies all over the world. But that right there, that's mentioned in your note, the Treaty of Paris. You'll need to know about that. We mentioned Russia a little bit yesterday. But from about 1200 to the early 1700s, Russia was mostly isolated from Western European developments. The big events such as the Crusades and the Renaissance and the Reformation really hadn't had as big an impact on Russia as it did on the Western European nations. So all these big events that we've studied throughout the year, in particular in the last few months, didn't have the same impact. But as a result, Russia developed its own civilization based on the values of the Eastern Orthodox Church and of the Byzantine Empire. When we talked earlier in the year about the Byzantine Empire, the eastern half of the Roman Empire, and then the Eastern Church. So Russia, that's how they developed, their values were developed or based a lot on this. Some of the famous Russian rulers, Ivan the Fourth, ruled from 1533 to 1584, and he was considered one of the most powerful Russian czars. Ivan III, of course, he had people ruling in his place, but he wound up becoming known as Ivan the Terrible or Ivan the Awesome. He's really, you hear a lot more referred to him as Ivan the Terrible. He was considered very intelligent, he was religious, and he was cruel. And as an adult, he became paranoid and saw treason everywhere. Now, this isn't uncommon with kings, especially people in these dictators. They do become many times paranoid. They see betrayal everywhere, and if somebody wants to take their job and they don't. So this is not an uncommon characteristic. Of course, it becomes in particular dangerous if you're already bent toward cruelty and you have absolute authority. But Ivan expand trade with Western Europe and to expand its borders. So this was going on during his reign. Another famous Russian ruler throughout these years that we're studying is Peter the First, known as Peter the Great. He was tall himself. He stood around 7 feet tall. That's extremely tall. I mean, really, especially for the time. And he sought to bring Russia in the mainstream of European civilization. So he really tried to learn and bring in Western culture, is what Peter the Great focused on. The other famous ruler at the time, Russia, was Catherine II. She would be known as Catherine the Great, and is considered the last of the great absolute monarchs. She significantly expanded Russia's borders to the south, and she secured a warm weather port on the Black Sea. Warm weather ports critical if you're talking about supplies, not just military, but supplies your people would need in trade. Because in a warm weather port, you're not hampered, as much with the winters. And this also helped, having access to this warm weather port helped her defeat the Ottoman Turks during her reign. But she is considered one of the last of the great absolute monarchs. And that would be czars ruling Russia for another, following Catherine the Great, another over 100 years, right up until the early 20th century, where the last czar ruled and was executed during a revolution. So, anyway, this is the end of the section. A couple of these little things did get cut short just due to time and trying to get through this for this particular week. We will see you on your Zoom review for the test on Thursday at 1 o'clock. See you then.